the final point I want to talk about is, let's play the music now. Let's just play the soft music for Eric, because you have done everything you have achieved has been as a diabetic, but not just any sort of diabetic. You had a pancreas transplant that failed. I mean, I can't pretend to understand these things, but that is what are you doing with that, Eric?
I'm going to give myself an injection right now.
Holy shit.
On worldwide net view. No, I'm not.
No,
I don't actually need it. I don't want to have to actually go into a hypoglycemic reaction in front of everything.
Eric, I kind of get the feeling that both of our brains are a bit too scrambled here. But
yes.
We will get...
I'm a diabetic. I'm an insulin-dependent diabetic. I always was throughout my entire career, which is why people thought I was a coke addict.
That can be an extreme inconvenience. I mean, so you're constantly blood testing and...
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk about a ball ache. I mean, who wants that on their plate? With everything you're doing, do the business stuff, put the family stuff in there. You don't want to be a diabetic.
Well, it did manifest itself in the worst way as the complications. I always had a problem with touring because I would get sick very easily, and when one guy on a tour bus gets sick, then everybody gets sick.
Yeah.
And while I was in law school, of course, I took a break from managing death and decided to become a lawyer in the middle of that, and my kidneys failed. I fought blindness in the second year of law, and in the third year of law, my kidneys actually failed. And then right after my kidney transplant is when Chuck got his diagnosis of cancer. So, yeah, it's health is sort of a prominent side topic when it comes to discussions with my Schildiner loved ones.
That really does suck.
Yeah, but I don't. People that know me personally, they know that it's absolutely no impediment to me that I'm on immunosuppressant drugs for kidney transplant, that my pancreas transplant didn't work, because of course it didn't work. It only lasted 7 months, then it failed. And they only do it once.
So what does that mean? Does that mean you don't have
diabetes for 7 months?
Does that mean you don't have a pancreas, or?
No, it means I have two. I have mine, which doesn't work, and then I have some poor unfortunate woman who died in a car accident whose pancreas I got, and that doesn't work either.
Does that?
And remove them because it's too complicated and.
So you're technically a mutant.
Yeah. I'm a freak. I have 3 kidneys and 2 pancreases.
No. But
one of those kidneys is my mom's, and she's very much alive, thankfully. And she gave me one of her kidneys. Around the time that The Sound of Perseverance was released. So, I'm a diabetic still, insulin dependent, and my kidney from my mom works.
Well, we don't need to harp on this for too long, because I didn't want to create some sort of sad story, but I feel it's important to let people. I feel it's important to let people know what you have achieved, with everything you've done, but you've done it with a severe illness. I mean, okay, you've got your arms and your legs, but if you can't get out the chair, Okay. Well.
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like I'm sicker than I really am. I'm just a lifelong insulin-dependent diabetic. I've had lots of surgeries, but I walk and talk, and can chew gum.
Well, it's just that thing of
I don't complain about it.
It's just that thing of give anybody else the condition alone, and that will consume them all day, every day. They won't be doing 10 businesses, and they'll just be like, oh, I've got to do my blood tests, and that'll be it, Well,
if I lived in England, I would be signing on, and I would never leave the home. I'd be in the council estate and have lots of children while I was 15.
I think the rest of the world needs to realise that is a bad thing that Eric has said there. That is not a good. That is not
a condescending, lousy type of thing to say about a very.
Are you trying to say that we've got a bit of an issue in this country, Eric? Is that? Are you touching on politics, Eric?
Yes, because don't forget, I was a lawyer and worked within the criminal justice system of the UK, so knew young offenders and their lifestyles in council estates quite well.
So you also know what is it? International human rights? Is that?
Yeah, I worked for a yacht, a youth offending team in England. So I am actually quite well acquainted with English politics and socio-economic issues, and we could talk about those another day. When
you're I kind of feel as though like even though I've come at this and I didn't want to go on tangents, I kind of feel like it happened anyway. But there's one.
But whether I would vote for Labour, the Lib Dems, or the Tories, I'm not going to admit that.
Who cares? Who cares about that? One last point, Eric. I recently spoke to Alex Fiddle, who I kind of like to call Fidel because it annoys him.
I know.
But he said something to me which I found quite interesting, and it hadn't actually crossed my mind. But he said to me, do you think Chuck would have wanted, the sort of Death in HD and the Death TRBR? He said, what do you think Chuck would have made of it? And I found that interesting because it was kind of like maybe Chuck wouldn't have wanted that. I mean, what's your take on the fans, keeping shit going like?
Well, I'll give you a really quick example of something that you're bringing up. Is this? We're talking about The Human at this very moment, which is April 2011.
The release.
We're putting together The Human reissue, and so we were among us. That's Steve DiGiorgio and Paul Masvidal and Sean Reiner talking about what we would include on there, and we're really including the kitchen sink with this reissue. We're putting all kinds of extra stuff in, and the guys were saying, oh, Chuck would never want that to have made the public domain, rehearsal tapes, all this kind of stuff that we've made a decision, that is the Schuldiners and I, that we wanted to see the light of day. And so the obvious question is, what would Chuck have wanted?
You're not gonna fit the kitchen sink in the post, Eric.
Hell yeah.
It's not gonna fit, man.
I took the water out of it. It's now freeze dried. But anyway, yeah, I just said, look, Chuck was the first person who would be out in the world for a Merciful Fate demo tape or a rehearsal tape of Sortilege or whatever. He would have been that guy. He would have been that fan. And so it's really difficult for me to play devil's advocate and say, well, if Chuck was alive now, because Chuck isn't alive, he's dead. So I say stuff like, well, if Chuck is looking down at us, which is kind of the way I talk in terms with friends and the Schuldiners, well, I guess he would think this was cool. But the thing is that if Chuck was alive, then none of this would be happening. He would be alive making records. He's not alive. He's dead. So all we can do is put out retrospectives and second guess what we think is in his best interest. So would he, if he was an angel looking down, think he would think a lot of the hoopla about him creating death metal was ridiculous. But he also liked to be complimented for the work he did. He liked to be taken, and those who knew him knew he got angry at certain writers who were former friends, for stuff they wrote, because he didn't take criticism well. So look, so I don't know.
So to kind of get back to the point, you like you said, the only reason a lot of this is happening is because Chuck is gone. Otherwise, there wouldn't be. You can't attribute to someone alive doesn't make so much sense.
No, none of this. I don't know who it was. Scott Burns was being. I think it was Scott Burns who was being interviewed or something for Decibel magazine, and he made a very smart comment that when Chuck was alive, Gene Hoglan would have never been on the cover of a drummer magazine, and now he is. I mean, the world has changed. Back then, it was very difficult to get anything heavy sounding on the radio, but by the advent of new metal, which came, heavy guitars were a staple on even Radio 1. It became like a normal thing in pop to have heavy sounding guitars, and I mean, it's just a different world now, and what Chuck would find acceptable now versus what he would have found acceptable 10 years ago or 20 years ago is really anybody's guess. What we do know is this: we agree on the fact that Chuck did not like to sound outdated. He wanted to grow, and every album he did is a testament to that, because it's an achievement over the previous record. So he would have been Mr. Pro Tools now. He would have, maybe like me, had an understanding and a love for analog audio and old school recording, so don't get me wrong on that, but he was already playing around with drum machines and that kind of stuff in his bedroom before his death. So he would have modernized, and he would have been into technology. He would have thought that Death in HD was a great idea, for example.
Well, for me, part of the concept is
Smoke up your arse, either, mate.
Well, you just, for me, part of the concept of the channel is to try and get as much death stuff out there in as high a quality as possible. And if there's one thing I hear about Chuck, it's that he was always the professional that wanted it to be as good as it could be, and that's kind of a philosophy that I am a fan of. It's about having standards and offering that to the people, because I do believe people react to that. People react to a certain standard. It's like that you can tell when the effort has gone into something, and I actually think people do respect that.
Well, look, in death channels, you're a celebrity already, right? And that just sort of sprung up overnight, and you've been accepted into our fold because of they're at that high standard, just like Mara and War Chief and their writing, and everyone who's involved in this pulls their weight, right? And we're the first to say, hey, you've just come out of the blue, fantastic, welcome, come on in.
Eric,
and that's it. That's the way Chuck was. That's why he was able to just go from strength to strength, really, was because of his ability to just say, hey, whatever.